Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Real Birding Podcast, a show where we crack open the world of birding and talk about our own birding adventures. I'm Will Keller, coming to you from Charlotte, North Carolina.
And I'm Caleb Putnam in Grand Rapids, Michigan, as always.
Caleb, good to see you. I assume that you are starting to see more and more sparrows as October comes to a close, and as that rapidly becomes one of the more common passerine families that we can see in our neck of the woods.
Absolutely. I was out this weekend. A buddy of mine from Florida was up, and we went down to Miller Beach, of all places, did a little lake watching. Things got slow. So, as we do, we headed back into the sparrow fields, and they were full of swamp sparrows and a whole bunch of goodies mixed in. It was wonderful.
Sweet. Well, I'm really looking forward to breaking down the sparrows of North America, the East, maybe Michigan in particular, and just talking about what a cool group of birds that is, and maybe even a few ID pointers, as they often pose quite an issue for birders of all sorts of skill levels. But before we get into that, I want to touch on last week's bird quiz. Last week, we played for y'all the song of a tufted titmouse, and Eric Gustafson got that correct. Thank you so much for playing, Eric, and good work. This week, we are going to play for you the song of a North American bird, and you are going to guess the name of that bird in the comments for a chance at a shout out at the beginning of next week's episode. Let us know what you think. All right, if you think you know what that is, drop it in the comments. But without further ado, let's get into the show. Caleb, it's chilly, man. I know every week we start with it's like we're coworkers or something in the break room. We talk about weather first thing, but it's the first thing in my mind right now because it's just so blissful here. Look out the window right now. It's like 63 degrees and sunny. So I couldn't be happier right now.
How could you not talk about the weather? I've got fleece on. It's like so cold that if I walk out there, I'm actually chilly for the first time. And you know what happens when the weather turns like this, Will? The warblers and the neotrops are gone, and the winter birds are not quite in yet. And what do you have when you're out and about? And the answer is sparrows. It's that mid-October, late October special. It's those birds that fill in that gap for us, that give us something to be really excited about when we're out and about, walking the little, rail trails, or, even in your backyard. Like, these migratory sparrows are all over the place, and there's goodies mixed in too. Like, they're fun,
Yeah,
like you said,
absolutely.
they're hard to identify, but they're fun, and like they hide, but they're visible. You can get them. Like, you actually can get them to come out, like little tricks of the way you pitch and so on. So
Mm-hmm.
it's really a timely
Yeah.
topic for this time of year.
And maybe more so than any other sparrow species that we have is the dark-eyed junco. I'm starting to hear as I'm leaving for work every morning, toot 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 toot, as they fly over in the trees above my apartment. So that is definitely the main harbinger of winter and late fall that everybody knows. The snowbird.
Absolutely, Will. This is the bird that tells you that winter is nearly here. But if you're out and about, you'll notice that a few of them come in before the real onslaught of them. So, like, we've had a few of them around up in Michigan here, in lower Michigan, for, like, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks. But they're not really in the full numbers yet. But this is one of those great birds that really, like, warms the backyard. It warms your winter house. Because people who aren't even birders know this bird because they see it in the backyard, and they really bring a lot of life to that cold winter landscape.
Well, and they go from being completely absent throughout most of the populated parts of Michigan, especially, to being the most abundant bird that you can find, especially in the sort of suburban setting.
Absolutely. Yeah, and whereas most of them in the east anyway look like this nice gray color. This is the adult of the slate colored junco, the eastern taiga subspecies. If you look carefully, you'll see that a few of them have this kind of brownish orangey wash in here, and that's actually the youngsters and the females. So, like, birds like this are actually fairly common in the east. Do you see those in North Carolina?
Yeah, I think that's what we got. I don't think the Appalachian group is. I don't think it's a different subspecies. I think they're all slate colored.
Nice, nice. And then it's always a treat. Folks who live out west will know the Oregon Junco really well. And occasionally, once in a blue moon, we will get one in Michigan or in the east here as well. And they have like this nice little gray hood that you can see, from behind as well. Like this is kind of a classic looking bird. Really, really a neat little twist on it, and very orangey, very colorful.
Very colorful for a sparrow. And it's funny, the most colorful sparrows are not actually called sparrows. I feel like towhees and juncos get to have a lot more color than a lot of the just more drab brown birds that we see.
Yeah, actually, tell me, are towhees properly sparrows these days? Because I know that the taxonomy is always goofy, but they are, right?
Last I knew, yeah.
Got it. That's funny that was the highest quality rated photo in the entirety of Macaulay Library. Yeah, but these guys are really big compared to most sparrows. Yeah, towhees, and they always. I'm sure they are a sparrow, but they almost feel like they might be a different group or something. They're so big, and the sounds are a little different. Really weird looking, bright looking plumages and like red eyes like this.
You know what else is a large sparrow that's not actually called sparrow is bush tanager. Do you remember seeing that in the Andes almost 2 years ago now?
Yes. What's the other name for that? They have a different name these days.
I thought it was
chlorospingus. It's chlorospingus, right?
There's something called bush tanager. It's the first and the last name there. Bush tanager. It's different.
That's not the same thing, huh?
Well, I remember there's a lot of different chlorospinguses down there, at least a handful.
I am pretty sure that's the same bird, Will.
Really?
I think it's the same bird.
Wow.
Somebody in the audience might be able to correct us on that, but
no, you're right. You're totally right.
Yeah, because when I first went to Mexico in the year 2000, these were called bush tanagers back then, and they switched them to chlorospingus. Well, you're saying that chlorospingus is a sparrow, huh?
I believe so.
Wow. It actually doesn't look totally wrong for a sparrow. It has a little bit of a tanager looking beak, though. But
let's fact check this in real time.
Yeah, we better. We're gonna look stupid otherwise.
Oh nope, it's the tanager family. I might have to cut that out.
Yeah, we can just cut that whole thing out then.
Wait, more recent research suggests that they are actually aberrant brush finches in the Passerellidae. Okay, so traditionally they were placed in the tanager family, but now they're in Passerellidae, so they are sparrows.
Oh, they are. So the bush tanager is a sparrow. That's incredible.
Yes, we won't have to cut that out.
Wow. Well, I tell you, taxonomic stuff gets really, really goofy, and a lot of the patterns that you would expect to be true often end up not being true. And wasn't the dickcissel for a long time thought to possibly be a sparrow, and just it was kind of bounced around to all these different groups, and there's other examples of this type of thing too, like yellow-breasted chat. Is it a warbler? Is it an oriole? What is it? That type of stuff.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're just an oddball branch of the evolutionary tree, right? They're not necessarily cleanly in one or the other. I don't know.
Well,
it's great fun.
With genomics, you actually can figure out what their closest relatives are. You might not be able to figure out if it's closer to a white-throated sparrow than a clay-colored sparrow, but you can tell that they both share a common ancestor that is closer to that than it would be to a blackbird or whatever.
Right. Let's get to the sparrows, Will, that we see in the last, week or two of birding. What are the ones that are the classic sparrows that turn you on the most to that mid-October crisp air?
For me, it's zonotrachea sparrows. So white-crowned sparrow, white-throated sparrow, and then the odd Harris's sparrow if there's one that we can chase that's around in the fall. But it's such a cool group. They're so visible and loud, and they're constantly making that little call note. And they're just so pretty and easy to identify, which is always helpful.
Dude, that was exactly the group that I was going to pick. They're so fun. It always tells you that migration is happening, and they can be so common. Like white-throated sparrow at our banding station around here. We were talking about this the other day. We caught like 25 of them in a small amount of effort in one morning. And I said to the lead bander there, Mike, I'm like, how many do you think are actually on this property? And he goes, yes, I've been thinking about this. Is it 100? Is it is it 50? Like, because I don't think we caught half of the ones that were present. The nets barely cover any of the area. So this
Yeah.
bird gets extremely common in the east. And I think a lot of them are, I mean, they breed almost up into Alaska, don't they? I'm
Yeah,
pretty
I think
sure.
so.
So I
Um,
think all those birds are migrating from like Alberta, that northwestern taiga region, are presumably coming east and coming down, and that's why we get them in such huge numbers. Versus song sparrow has the same population level across the continent, but in the nets you might be lucky to catch 5 of them, but you got 25 white-throated sparrows. It's very interesting.
yeah. And then do you know off the top of your head that I almost didn't bring this up, but you know that research that came out recently that showed the different morphs of white-throated sparrow and how they don't pair up with each other nice and even. What's the rule there?
Dude, this stuff is not fresh in my mind, but I'll give it the best I can. So that one that I just set up was the white morph, and then this is not a great example. This is a better example here. This is called the tan morph of white-throated sparrow, and it might. This is the type of thing where you can have like dark morph, light morph in a certain species. I think it's the same exact genetics that's determining it as that. But not only do they not mate with one another, that paper was, I think there was differences in like migration timing and in other key aspects of their biology that was different. So it's very, very fascinating because
So
it's easy to just kind of ignore this, right? And not pay like that much attention to it when you're out in the field.
I thought I had heard that there can be male and females of they used to think that the darker ones were the females and the brighter ones were the males, but what they found is that it's about split 50-50 which one is which, and they actually do mate with one another. But the pale birds share behavioral characteristics on the breeding grounds that you would expect to be associated with sex, but it's actually associated with their with the morph, whether they're light or dark. Do you know anything about that?
No, you're hitting above my pay grade here. I haven't read the paper in a long time, but it doesn't surprise me. It doesn't.
Yeah,
I think you tend to overlook a lot of biology until you start doing studies like that and get into the weeds with them.
yeah.
So
One more
that's
bird in this
fascinating,
group
man.
was yeah. We got to talk about white-crowned sparrows too. They were just everywhere when I
Got
was
to.
back in Michigan a couple of weeks ago. And you know what's funny about that bird is they seem to bunch up in certain areas. Like they really like the farm fallow field areas. They like the lakeshore, but I don't see them that often in the suburban areas. I don't see them at my parents' house. I don't see them in neighborhoods a lot. It seems like they're a little bit more purist
Yep.
when it comes to the habitat.
Yeah, that's exactly my experience growing up in Michigan. These guys come through in spring and fall in very relatively narrow windows, and they can be very common, like you said. And but you run into a flock of 15 or 20 of them in one place, and then the next 2 miles of the trail you don't see any.
Mhm.
Whereas with white-throated sparrow, they tend to be a little bit more spread out on the landscape. I've also noticed with climate change in general, these guys are wintering much farther north. We've had to open the eBird filters up here because they're becoming such a common wintering bird. And I would say, boy, they were almost absent up here certainly 20, 30 years ago. They just were not wintering here. So that's another shift that we're seeing. They're even at the banding station, which is halfway up the lower peninsula. There's a wintering
Yeah.
population up there. But I love how they have their little football helmets with the racing stripes that are black and white, and then in the adult, and then kind of just like dark brown and gray in the youngster. Um,
Yeah.
such a it's such a fun species. Like it's I don't know. It always gets my excitement level up when I find white crowns because you know that you're getting like a fleeting experience that'll be over probably within the month.
They're quality birds, that's for sure. Um, can I ask you this? Do you have a favorite sparrow, like a favorite North American sparrow?
That is really tough, Will, but I think I do, and it's this beauty,
Mm-hmm.
LeConte sparrow.
Mm.
Now, this is a rare species. You rarely encounter these guys. You have to work really hard typically, and you have to go to the right like breeding sedge bog or meadow, wet meadows up north in the summertime to get them. So it's a big part of why they're so exciting is the rarity, but
Yeah.
also, you know, sparrows have a reputation of just being dull little brown jobs, LBJs, and boring looking. And if you had your eyes squinted, you might say the same thing here. But the truth is, if you look at this, it's as colorful as any of those tanagers we see in the Amazon. I mean, this thing,
Yeah.
it's got this incredible, like bright yellow all through the face. And if you can zoom in on the nape here and look at this, it's like it's kind of like raspberry highlights amongst gray, and then like these just rich color palettes with the scallops and so on, like in the mantle and wing coverts and scapulars here. It's actually a subtly gorgeous bird. How about you?
Yeah. Well, just to that point, I wanted to point out a lot of people really love the warblers for all their color and their complexity. But if you actually look at the plumage of most warblers, it's not nearly as complex as a lot of the sparrows with all of the scalloping that goes into the upper parts of these birds.
Right. It's the difference between gaudy and just subtly gorgeous, you know. And the
Yeah.
sparrows and actually I it's not just the gold what do we call the golden sparrows like LeContes and Nelsons. You know, even stuff like swamp sparrow is actually a really pretty bird. Um,
Pull it up. Yeah, that's a great one.
and I have to point out, I will, but I have to point out the juvenile of LeContes too. This brief, they have this brief plumage, like when they come out of the nest for maybe like a month or so, where the entire bird is bright yellow like this, and really hard to see.
Mm,
Because by the time they come south, they've already started to look a lot more like the adult after they had their preformative molt.
sure, sure.
Um, Okay, so yeah, let's do swamp sparrow, dude. This is such a great little bird. The folks in the West don't get these. You know, this is a eastern taiga species. It would only be strictly a vagrant on the West Coast.
Yeah, it's in the genre of sparrows with the red caps, which there are a few. And actually, I don't think all of them are super closely related. Are tree sparrows in the same genus?
Mm. No, this is Melospiza, which is the same genus as uh, song sparrow, Lincoln sparrow, um, and I think those are the main three right there. And it's funny because Lincoln sparrow has the same buzzy call as swamp sparrow, and the juvenile plumages of the two of them actually can be extremely hard to tell apart, even though the adults are really easy to tell apart. That's a little interesting taxonomic piece right there.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
tell me about swamp sparrows, Will. What's your experience with them? Where do you get them? Like what type of habitat do you? When do you get them? All that kind of stuff.
So it's one of those birds that it's very common, especially in the upper Midwest in the breeding time and migration and on the breeding grounds and stuff. But they seem a little bit more rare because they like that habitat. They like that swampy habitat, so they're usually kind of tucked away, and their song is kind of cryptic because it sounds just like a lot of other things that you might be hearing. Chipping sparrow being probably the most common mistake that you'd make because it's just a tick 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 tick, you know. But yeah, I love these birds. If you can actually
Bell.
get
It
eyes
sounds
on
like
them,
a whistle bell ringing.
yeah, yeah, that's exactly right. But
Okay.
yeah, the rufous in that wing is just, I mean, it really stands out.
Yeah, I agree. It's another one it's not as exquisitely pandered as a LeConte sparrow is, but there's a lot of like really pretty stuff going on. You know, if you look carefully, and every now and again you'll get one like this where there's a little bit of yellow here, almost like the white-throated sparrow, kind of in the lower right in front of the eye there. Um,
Sure.
let's talk Lincoln sparrow for a second.
Oh yeah, that's such a good one.
This would be another candidate for one of the prettiest birds I can in this group that I can think of. And it's not
Sure.
necessarily the color with these guys. It's the take kind of bold blotches which other sparrows have perfected, and you make them a little bit more elegant. So you take the stripes underneath and you make them thin little racing stripes. You add thin little eyeliner marks in the crown like this.
Hmm.
Um, and then you also put this in, like, this is such a classic look of the species right here, just like these really thin. And then you put a splotch of like buffiness kind of through the throat and through the breast and flank area. And then one of my favorite quotes of Roger Tory Peterson in the Peterson Guide growing up, he had those little vignettes and he would put like the behavioral descriptions. Um, this is a bird that is afraid of its own shadow, and
Hmm.
it resonates so incredibly well. because you can almost tell that it's going to be a Lincoln sparrow by the way that it behaves, and that
Mhm.
rings so true to me.
Yeah. You know,
And look at the
another
fine
cool thing about
streaking in the
this.
upper tail coverts and upper parts here too. Fuck, dude.
Yeah, dude. It's such a
Sorry.
great bird, and the song of this bird is unbelievable, and it's such a treat to get to hear them. I never get to hear them. They don't sing a ton in migration, and I'm almost never on their breeding grounds while they're vocalizing. Could we pull up a song for this?
Absolutely. We did a short on this, folks will know. We put that out on social media a couple months ago. I had a bird up in the Kirtland's Warbler area that was singing on territory and was, yeah, it's almost weird and like house renny.
Yeah, every time I hear it, I'm like, what am I hearing right now? And then it takes a while to sort of clock in. That and fox sparrow is another one that every time I hear those two singing, I'm like, what am I hearing?
Yeah, yeah. And what you said is so true. During migration, when you're seeing these, they really aren't vocalized, or they'll be giving you flight calls, but they won't be giving you the actual song. Here we go.
It always makes me it always just makes me stop right in my tracks. You can just tell it's different. In so many ways, this is like an upgraded song sparrow, with the song and the appearance. Yeah, and the rarity too, because you only gonna get a handful of them every spring.
Dude, what you just said, the upgraded song sparrow, is a perfect description. Oh my gosh. I've not even heard that before, but that resonates big time. And this is
Hmm.
such a great look too. Like they're very often in the dark. They're in like a shadow, just like this. So you at first you're like, is this bird just like all brown or something? And then you get on, you're like, oh my gosh, it's a Lincoln sparrow, like with all the patterning and all the color.
Can I share my favorite sparrow now?
Yes, please.
Henslow's sparrow, dude. I mean, I think you kind of stole everybody's favorite sparrow with the LeContes, but if it's not the LeContes, it's got to be the Henslows for me.
What a great bird, Will. And I don't know how they got these photos. They probably had to tape this bird in because these guys are the stereotypical rarest species you've got, and it's always out in only a select few of the prairie habitats that you've got. They
Hmm.
reject most prairies. They have to have the exact right conditions. So you just don't bump into these guys. You have to select the place to go that has them. And then you have to get a little lucky too. Like they're not always singing, and then they tend to, when you get them, it's windy out typically, and they're like way out in the middle of the field. So that's amazing that these people got this close to it.
Yeah. Yep. It's a beautiful bird. Very similar to yep, that song. Listen to that. That's the only sound that it makes as a song, that tiny little phrase.
What a bird. It's also got as I pause it here, it's got the green face with the red back, and that is a really unusual combo.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any other species that has that. What a great choice, Will. It's hard to disagree with you on that one. Let's do song sparrow next. Like this is one that's kind of common most places in the lower 48. Probably not at the further south you go. I think they get tough, but and maybe are they in the Sonoran? I can't remember. Like or Texas, they get absence in certain places, but this is kind of like the standard native sparrow in most places of the country. Um, they are sort of brown and streaky. You tend to get like the bigger blotches all over the breast and flank area, and then you get that big spot in the middle. And then also like the big malar spot is often quite obvious as well. But
Yeah.
how do you know you're on a song sparrow? Well, what's the clue?
For me, I don't know. You know how like when you see your mom walking down the street, you could see her from a mile away and you'd know who it is, or your brother or your sister. You know these people so well. For me, I've seen so many song sparrows that, one could flush up from, 100 yards away naked eye. And I'm like, that's got to be a song sparrow just based on the behavior and the proportions. But by and large, they have a long tail and a often kind of rufusy colored tail, a little bit more rufous than the rest of the bird, kind of like a hermit thrush, actually, is how I kind of know them. But yeah, that those dark malar spots, I always call them their little neck triangles when I was trying to describe them as a kid. But yeah, it's just it's a song sparrow. It is what it is.
Yeah, no, that's really great, and that's also a testament to just how when something's really common like this, you just emblazon the search image in your head in a way that you don't even realize, and all of a sudden it's just like song sparrow, song sparrow. I'm totally with you. They're also it's a
You know,
habitat thing because they tend to be around water or at least where there's maybe wetter ground, but especially if there's like some shrubs present. You can
yeah.
kind of walk up to a place and know, oh, there's going to be a song sparrow in here.
Mhm. Another thing they do is they'll be sort of perched up, maybe just visible, right at the top of the grasses or the bushes. And then as soon as you get close, they'll pop up 2 feet and then dive down really quick with their tail flipping right up in the air. That is such a song sparrow behavior. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Almost like they're being curious and wanting to take a look. In fact, I would say that more broadly, that is a really stereotypical sparrow pattern in general. So one of the tricks that one of my buddies taught me when we were out sparrowing, actually took me a long time in my birding career to even realize this. I should have been on this earlier, but not just like proper pitching, but sparrows respond really well if you just do these little I don't know if that's audible through the mic or not, but just
Yeah.
little seat calls, a few of them back to back. All the birds that are down in the bush, typically, if you do that for maybe I don't know 10 seconds, they'll start to kind of work their way up where they can see you because they want to see what's going on. I don't know exactly why they do it or what they think is going on, um, but you'd be amazed how many sparrows you can get a good look at by using that.
What I often try to do is a common yellow throat sort of alarm call, which is like, I don't know if you can hear that,
Hmm.
but they seem to also react to that sort of stuff
Yeah.
too.
And then Will, you've also got the chimp call. And this is another one. As soon as you hear this chimp call, you do not have to look to see the bird. You already know that you've got a song sparrow. And here it is. So it's so fun because they'll even winter up here. I'm sure they winter most places in the lower 48 as well. So it's always a really nice treat to come across one of these guys, like on a Christmas bird count or something. You get kind of excited.
Yep, it's just it's sad that that's like the highlight of birding in January in Michigan, but that's probably the best thing you're going to find on any given day in in Michigan in January, that is.
Probably so. Unless you get
Yeah.
lucky and get an orange crown warbler, which does happen. All right, well, let's move to the another genus that we haven't touched yet, and that's the Spizella. These are the smaller birds, birds of summer, at least up here. And these have a habit and a penchant for hanging out and kind of, I don't know how to say it, open, you know, bad, poor quality soil with like no shrubs. There might be a few tall trees, but you'll get like during migration with chipping sparrow in particular, you'll get like a flock of 30 of them and you haven't encountered them anywhere else on your checklist. And then they'll all come out of like an oak tree and fly out into the middle of the open area and then kind of just disappear into the ground. Like they become almost like ghosts, like impossible to see once they land. And I always want to look through them because you can get like lark sparrows mixed in and interesting, clay colored could be mixed in, stuff like that. Um,
Yeah.
and it can be like just pulling teeth to get good looks at these guys sometimes.
Right. We talked about Juncos being the harbingers of late autumn and winter. These are the harbingers of spring because they're so common in the neighborhood areas, in the suburban, and even in cities. And once they're back, it's like a week until leaf out, and you're like, okay, it's game time. You know.
Totally. And I have one that'll show up in March and be singing in the parking lot outside my condo. Um,
Mm,
and pretty much that the atmosphere has turned from winter mode over to spring summer mode as soon as you start hearing them
hmm.
sing. They are not here in that winter feeling weather normally. And in winter, this is
Yeah.
another little tidbit here, but when you get them in winter, they are a lot harder to tell. But they have the black stripe through the eye that extends in front of the eye all the way to the beak, kind of in the lore here, which can help you tell it apart from clay colored.
Yep. Absolutely. And what a good sparrow, clay colored sparrow is. That's my favorite in this genus for sure.
This is another one that is it looks boring at first, but then if you actually hone in on it and have a closer look, they're actually really really pretty, and they have this. It's just a subdued color palette, but it's really pretty. Um, And the other thing about these guys, out west, they're quite common. They're quite abundant in the open, shrubby landscapes in the west. They can get a little bit common in the north, but in the east where we live, these are thin. They are
Mhm.
not a common migrant at all. In fact, I don't even get this annually in my county. I actually just got one this fall. It was the first one I've had in a couple of years in the county.
It's a
Um,
good find.
and oh, it's great. And when you find one mixed in with chipping sparrows, you're it definitely gets your heart rate up. You're like, oh, this is gonna be something interesting. So
Yeah. No, it took me. I never saw him as a kid. I had to chase one in Kalamazoo in like 2020 to get my lifer. Yeah, it's not a bird you can really rely on seeing unless you're really checking their breeding habitat. Their song is also so noteworthy. Are you ready?
I was just thinking the same thing. It literally sounds like an insect. This is one of those birds that you would, if you heard this and didn't know it was a bird, you might not even believe somebody who told you that it was a bird because it sounds like the
Yeah.
wings of a grasshopper to me, like stridulation.
They're also not very loud. I don't know if you've come across this, but whenever I bump into these singing in a field somewhere, I'm like, oh, this thing's going to be all the way across the field because I can barely hear it. But then it'll be like 80 yards away and just perched right up. It's not like a lot of sparrows where they're really broadcasting across the entire territory.
That's so interesting. You want to see another fun thing about these?
Yeah.
Okay, so one other little tidbit, and this will get into another species of spizella, in fact, that we haven't talked about, but is the field sparrow. But the field sparrow happens to nest in the same shrubby stuff that clay-colored nests in, and every now and again, and once in a blue moon, you'll get a clay-colored out of range. So, like this particular individual was found in Lorain County, Ohio, in the summertime, which is pretty far south, really far south for clay color. They're much farther north than that in the summer. But this bird was actually not a pure one. And here's the call that they of the song. Hear that?
No way.
So it has the voice of clay color, the the insect like thing, but it has the accelerated ping pong ball cadence of field sparrow. So they tracked this bird down, like wondering, like, what in the world is this?
Hmm.
And there it is. So it was a clay colored times field sparrow, dude, and that's totally what happened. You, in my opinion, you had a clay color that stayed south of the normal areas. It couldn't find a mate, and all around it was the field was full of field sparrows, and that's what it mated with. So they were actually able to misnet the thing and get it published.
Yeah, it's like a
Um,
bad night in Vegas or
yeah.
something, but hey, no judgment.
Birds don't have to follow the rules, do they? I tell you.
Yeah. No, and very few species do follow rules, including humans. So what do it's hard. You can't judge.
Hard to argue. All right, dude. And we would be remiss to not finish this episode on fox sparrow. What a lovely creature this thing is. It is so easy to miss them when they come through, and they're rarer than the zonotrichia, like white, even white crowned. Like you'll get them in sort of numbers. This is one where you'll be lucky to get 3 in a morning. Five.
Yeah.
Five would be a great total on a morning checklist when they're there. And they're pretty. They're bold. Like we have in the east the red subspecies. So it's just the bird almost looks like brick red everywhere with these beautiful big triangles and like the gray in the face. Um, and
Yeah.
then the other thing that I always notice about them because they have this little smack call that's really it's almost like a junco, and you don't hear it very often. So almost always when I first hear it, and I'm like, what is this going to be? And then it ends up being a fox sparrow. I'm like, oh, I keep forgetting about this call. They have this habit of being inside a canopy woodlot, and they'll be down in the leaf layer. And since they're a really bigger and hefty sparrow, they have really good ability to kick the leaves apart to find food.
Yes.
Yeah, actually, here's a slow motion video of it. So really, really strong foot action as they clear the leaves around.
Yep. This is another bird that you can tell without binoculars, and you can actually probably tell without seeing the bird. If you're looking down and you're seeing all these leaves getting kicked up, you can almost bet for sure that it's going to be a fox sparrow. I mean, all the sparrows will try to do this, but the fox sparrows create like a crater around them when they do it. The leaves start flying around in the air. Um, it's also a fun one because they're they're rare, but they're not as picky as white crown sparrow are, for example, because these will turn up in people's backyards, no problem. You know?
Yeah, dude. We were going through the back field, the sparrow field at Miller Beach the other day. And there's trees beside the field, but the fox sparrows were right out in the habitat with the swamp sparrows, like in the wet meadow stuff, and the shrubs, which was kind of interesting. And there was quite a few. There was like 10 of them down in there. And I had to show some of the western subspecies too. They have darker ones. This is the sooty from British Columbia. Isn't that Bergman's rule? The moister the habitat, the darker the bird, something like that.
Yeah, probably to blend in more with the forest floor, right?
Yeah, exactly. And the shadows of the Pacific Northwest, rainforest, that type of stuff.
Yeah, love it.
So anyway, all in all, Will, the sparrows are such a fun group. It adds so much splash and flavor to the transitions in the seasons. Both spring and fall. I'm always fascinated too like fox sparrow, right? It comes late in the fall. Like November is a good month for them. Late October and into November, they're so hardy. And then in the same vein, they come back in the spring early. It's like you can get them in like March, real early. But look at what white crown does. White crown does not push up here until like May 5th. You can go out May 1st and not have white crowns around yet, even though your fox sparrows have already been there for 6 weeks. So it's all very interesting. The parade, the sequence of the marchers in the parade is so stereotyped and so different, and it puts like such a cool marker into the seasons when you're paying close attention to what's in the yard.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. Yep. We love the groups, and I hope that everyone listening, if you're not into sparrows yet, get into sparrows because it makes the late fall so much more fun after all the warblers are gone. Otherwise, if you like this video, drop in the comments what sparrows you're seeing at your feeder right now. If you live in the old world, I'm so sorry. You're going to have to drop the weaver finches that you've been seeing at your feeders. That's one little thing that we didn't talk about is the house sparrow, which is the non-native sparrow that we have in the US, is not a sparrow at all. But it all depends on what you call it because they are just names at the end of the day. Anyways, thanks everybody for watching. So glad you could tune in, play the bird quiz, and we will see you next week.
Happy sparrowing, everybody. Peace.